Welcome to the latest episode of the Blazing Musket Podcast. We are joined this week by Ben Wright, an award-winning writer for 615 Soccer and Backheel.com. He joins us this week to talk about 615's annual end-of-season MLS fan survey, which I have already taken. Big fan of surveys, so any invitation to take one is one that I will certainly take. So we'll talk about that tonight. The Blazing Musket is also supporting that, so we'll get into that for a little bit. And then we'll also talk about the MLS playoffs from someone who's covering a team that is actually participating in those playoffs, MLS's spending habits, and just kind of Ben's thoughts on the league as a whole. There does always seem to be many talking points about Major League Soccer at any point. So Ben is here tonight to go over all of that with us. So Ben, how is your 2025 MLS season been treating you?
It's been fun. Really busy, but a lot of fun. I think this is probably the most I've written about the league in a year so far. And it's just been a blast. Obviously, Nashville, like you alluded to, being back in the playoffs, so kind of being able to cover them locally. But it's just been a really fun season for the league as a whole, and I've really enjoyed getting to watch it closely and write to whoever wants to read what I have to think about it. So yeah, I've loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the league does seem to, again, I think it's just kind of easy to criticize MLS if they do something, they get criticized in the way they do it. If they don't do it, they get criticized because they didn't do it, and that sort of thing. But it's just the league that, the more I follow it, the more I enjoy it, and I think it's in a much better place, than it was, certainly 10 years ago. I mean, is that kind of your similar experience? You think that, look, no league is perfect. Certainly MLS isn't, but if you look at where it was, maybe as far back as like 2015, and look at where it is now, I mean, do you think generally it's become a better thing to be involved with?
Totally, yeah. I think it's definitely making progress in the right direction. I think the issue is if it's making progress quickly enough. I think there are a lot of people who want to see it just take a big step forward, and I would consider myself one of those. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's been perfect, and I think there's still things that frustrate me, and I'm sure you and kind of anybody who follows the sport like closely. But I think overall, in the last 10 years, it's made a ton of progress. Yeah, so I don't know. That's a boring way of saying yes, I guess.
No, it's true though, because I mean, I think that's a good point that you made there. I think Jason Davis has said the same thing on a number of occasions, that people want MLS to be everything that it could possibly be all at once, and they want it all now, and that's not really how this sort of thing works. And we've seen other leagues try to do too much too quickly, and they end up not being around anymore. So it's definitely moving in the right direction, but definitely kind of they need to have some caution along the way as well. So with that, this fan survey, I remember I did it last year. I was excited to see that show up in my inbox, and an opportunity to do it again this year. How did this whole thing come about? And how did it start off? Did it start off just you guys down in Nashville? So how did this whole thing kind of come to be and turn into what it is now?
Yeah, so I mean, I think honestly, it was just us kind of scrambling for content ideas for the off season. It's tough to fill. It can be tough to fill 2 or 3 months. And so in a lot of ways, it felt like just an easy thing. Like, hey, we'll throw it to people who read our stuff and kind of have them like help us out with this. So we started it, I think, if I'm 2022 or 2023, and it was just a Nashville thing. It was like a Nashville SC specific portion of the survey, and then I think that was it. And then the following year, we added kind of a generic kind of MLS portion of the survey too, to kind of give people the option, if they obviously weren't in Nashville, to kind of try to hit a wider base of people. And so you could either do both. You could do the Nashville and the MLS part, or if you were just kind of a non-Nashville person, you could skip ahead and do the MLS portion. And we got a ton of responses for that. We were kind of surprised. I think we got close to 1,000 the past 2 years that we did it that way, which felt like a lot to us. And then after we ran it last year, Jeremiah Oshan with Sounder at Heart sent me a message. It was like, hey, this is really cool. It would be really cool if we tried to like collaborate and get other independent outlets involved, at least just to kind of push it out and get more people to take the MLS portion. So talking to him and a couple other people, we came up with the idea of having as many independent outlets as we could kind of set up their own portion of the survey. We wanted to be able to hear from fans of every team, but also like I'm not covering other teams day to day and don't know, like I don't have my finger on the pulse of those teams in the way that you guys have with the Revs or Hudson River Blue has with NYCFC or things like that. So it made more sense to have people who know the teams day to day kind of figure out what the best questions to ask are, but also to have independent outlets push it out to their readers. So we thought it would be a cool idea. It was kind of a scramble to get everything ready. But now that it's out, we've been blown away. I haven't checked in the past couple of days, but we're pushing like 3,500, 4,000 people responding, which kind of blew my expectations out of the water. And it's been really cool just kind of seeing some of the answers trickle in and just really kind of getting a feel for where fans of the league are. I think, I mean, like kind of what we were talking about just a second ago with like what we think of MLS and how it's progressing and all that. I think it's easy to kind of get caught in a bubble of people who are like super, super, super obsessed with this stuff in like a 0.01% like way. But to see just kind of what people who watch it as fans or maybe even more casually interested, to see a lot of the opinions kind of lining up. Like a lot of people want to see the salary cap increased. A lot of people have frustrations with the league schedule, every game kicking off at 7:30, like not being able to watch other games. It felt like I've been surprised at how kind of aligned everybody has been. But it's just been really fun kind of doing it and having an opportunity to hear from people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is definitely something that I certainly tend to forget, right? I mean, most of my interaction around the Revs is with the guys at the Blazing Musket, the guys at Revolution Recap, and then my wife and I are season ticket holders, right?
So like we sickos, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. I mean, we spend, especially the last couple of years, given how things have gone, an unhealthy amount of time really talking about this team, and it's easy to forget that. Okay, but most Revs fans are not, and probably are better off. They watch the game, right? Maybe they read a couple articles here and there during the week, but they're not like jumping on to social media as soon as the game is over and then launching into a back and forth debate on a Discord for 3 days over the substitution pattern of the coach and
Yeah. They're not doing napkin math to figure out how much GAM the Revs have available after the secondary transfer window closes.
Right, exactly, or even what any of that stuff means. I mean, the stuff I overhear people saying in the season ticket section that we're in is mostly just hey, they got this guy. Not hey, they spent $175,000 on GAM that they got when they saw. Like it's just like I said, probably a lot better off not knowing what any of that stuff is. So how many other independent sites are participating? Like you said, the Blazing Musket, Sounders at Heart. How many are there in total?
So yeah, I think it's 20 team-specific sites, and then we've had Backheeled, who I do some freelance work for. They put it out on their site, and then SoccerWise has kind of helped push it out too. So I guess 22 independent sites total, not including us.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, that's really impressive. Like you said, to start off just kind of doing it amongst yourselves, and then it's spread out to almost the whole league. I'm sure it'd be great at some point to be able to get representation from all 30 MLS teams.
Yeah, ideally that's the goal. We're going to try to. I mean, every year we're hoping to kind of make it a little bit better, but I think that's kind of the next big thing is to get 30 outlets involved next year.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that'd be amazing. So what type of questions are in there? Like maybe because, like you said, the team portion is tailored towards your specific team. So you can imagine some of the very exciting questions that Revs fans have to answer when they get to that part. But the first part, the general MLS survey, what kind of questions are in there that you're looking to get people's opinions on?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a lot of kind of general MLS stuff. How much do you watch MLS compared to other leagues? Where do you think MLS kind of stacks up in kind of like among global soccer leagues, which is always a little bit surprising to me. I think I always assume that people in the US think MLS is kind of just not great quality. I think that's kind of what you hear from, I guess it's probably a vocal minority of people who just say like Europe or bust. But it's always kind of surprising seeing like I'm pulling up the numbers now. Sorry, I was kind of stalling there for a little bit, but we have it broken down on kind of like a 1 to 5 scale, like 1 being least satisfied, 5 being most. 50.4% of people had MLS's quality at a 4 out of 5. So like a pretty significant number. So people are impressed with the quality. They're like 78% of people say they watch MLS more than any other soccer league, which I mean, for a lot of this, you'll probably have to like kind of assume that people who are filling out the survey anyway are kind of like prone to watching MLS more than other leagues just because they're taking an MLS survey. But like people are watching it. People are generally happy with the quality. People want more roster spending. That's always one of the big ones. Like almost 70% of people say that roster spending is very important to their enjoyment of MLS. We have like kind of open-ended, like short answer questions, and like the number one response we get for like what fans would change to give MLS a better on-field product is raise the salary cap. Like that's probably 95% of the answers that we get. And then it's just things about like MLS season pass. Like 93% of people subscribe to it. People say they would probably watch about the same amount of games if they got rid of the subscription model and just rolled it into Apple TV, which I was a little bit surprised. I thought that maybe the extra subscription was kind of keeping people away from it. But again, I think we're surveying MLS fans who are probably watching it anyway.
Yeah.
So just stuff like that, and then a lot of stuff about just national media coverage versus independent media coverage, and I think it definitely skews more favorably towards independent media. People are from this just kind of fed up with the traditional media coverage. I think that clip that went around from ESPN last week of people just dismissing the Miami-Nashville series, I think stuff like that has kind of fed into a fan perception that national media just doesn't care about MLS, which, I mean, I guess for people like us who do independent media, that kind of cuts out a market and a niche for us. But I think it is cool seeing how fans who really care about MLS are definitely leaning more towards the independent sites who are kind of doing the day-to-day coverage.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought that up, because I couldn't understand why people were upset. You know, like, okay, Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon don't want to talk about soccer. Like, okay. I mean, I who cares? I used to watch that show 20 years ago when I primarily watched baseball and basketball, but I don't. I watch motorsport and soccer. So those guys not talking about soccer, you know, okay, fine, no problem. I don't really care. There's national shows out there that are talking about soccer, that are talking about MLS. Like, it's not like you say, it's not like it's not there. Like this isn't like pre-internet where if it's not on the newspaper, if it's not on TV, well then, you know, you've got to subscribe to some like random magazine that shows up once a month, and it might as well not exist. Like
Totally.
So I couldn't really understand why people were so upset. It's like, hey, look, if those guys don't want to talk about soccer, it's fine, no problem. Like, I mean, I don't. Is ESPN even like, how relevant is ESPN at 5:30 anymore? You know, like I said, nothing against those guys. They're funny. Like, they put on a good show, but I haven't watched that show in 15 years.
Yeah, no, I think I tend to agree with you. I mean, I think obviously it would be nice to see it pushed out a little bit more, but I mean, a few things. First of all, I think ESPN is going to talk about what people want to hear about, and I think the unfortunate reality is that MLS is not. It comes nowhere close to most of the other sports that they cover right now, just in terms of like overall TV numbers, viewership, popularity, and that's fine. And I think I get a little bit frustrated with fans like demanding the sport to be treated at the level of the NFL when it's just not there yet. And I think that's fine. Like, that's not a bad thing. It can be like kind of it is kind of its own little thing right now. And maybe it'll grow and we all want it to grow. But like, it's a 20, 25, 30-year-old league. Like, you're playing catch up to sports and leagues that have been like fully embedded in American culture for 100 years. So like, I don't know. I don't exactly know where I'm going with that. I agree with you that I don't think it's the worst thing ever. And I do think, like, if ESPN isn't talking about it, there are people who are talking about it and are covering these teams day to day. It's more of the independent sites, but like, there's good coverage out there for every MLS team if you look for it.
Yeah, I mean that's what I found. I had an opportunity to get invited on to some other team-based podcasts like during the season. The guy Toronto Till I Die. The guys up in
Yeah.
Montreal, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head.
Ball is round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, hey, and then I listen to that podcast for like 2 or 3 weeks after I go on, just to like listen. Look, I don't follow those teams, but like you said, there's really good quality content out there. It's not that hard to find either. Like if you do a search for New England Revolution roster, you don't you don't have to go too far down, and the Blazing Musket starts to show up pretty quickly because we're the ones that are putting the content out there. And I'm sure it's the same for for you all down in down in Nashville. You're putting the stuff out there, and people want to find it. It's there to be found. You don't need a cable. It's like, again, it's not like you don't need cable. There's guys on here that are always upset that local sports talk radio doesn't talk about the Revolution. It's like, do you want local sports talk radio to talk about like? You're better off. Like, you're better off not listening. But it always strikes me as a little odd.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are experts talking about every team in MLS. I think kind of like the actual TV like deal, you have to look for it a little bit more, which maybe to MLS's detriment in the short term. But yeah, I think if you look for it, there's coverage, good like quality local day-to-day like boots on the ground coverage of every MLS team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got guys that are taking time off from work to go to training. I mean, it's a real like they're doing this because they want to, right? Not because they're being pushed down there. Hey, like you gotta do something during the summer. You gotta go down and cover the Revs when maybe you don't really want to. But yeah, and just generally like the MLS being on Apple TV. How did you feel about that initially? And like, how has that evolved over time? Because I think that it seems like a lot of sports are just headed in this direction anyway. And it just so happened that MLS was kind of the first one to just like that. Okay, we're this is where we are, and that's the only place you can get us now.
Yeah, I think they were probably an early adopter, and I do think places are headed that way. I think there were a couple things in hindsight that I think were mistakes. Making it a separate subscription, I think, was a big mistake. I think it should have ideally just been part. If you subscribe to Apple TV, you get season pass instead of having to pay an extra, what is it, $15 a month. Because I do think, obviously, getting the money from a TV deal is important. But I think it's also important to just have games in a place where fans can kind of organically stumble across it. I like anecdotally, I know 5 or 6 people who have become like diehard MLS fans because they were sitting on their couch on a Sunday afternoon and scrolling through channels and saw a game on ESPN. And so I do think it's a miss not having that as widely available, just because it's harder to kind of just stumble across MLS games. You have to like go looking for it. So I think that's a downside, but I think it's just a much more professional product. Like before, it varied so much from market to market. Like some clubs and some markets did a fantastic job with the TV product they put out, and then others just were kind of amateur. And so like depending on what team you were watching each week, like it could give the league a bad look sometimes. So I think having like the production value and kind of the uniformity to the TV product, I think has been huge. Having some kind of like studio programming is huge, and I think it's also a miss that there's not more. Like besides match night every week, there's nothing on Apple TV. Like, and they have people on staff like Andrew Wiebe and Matt Doyle and guys like that who you can give them an hour like twice a week to kind of do like shoulder programming for MLS. And I think that's kind of the stuff that people who are like the people that we were just talking about, the people who are filling out the survey, the people who are like are even semi into the weeds. Like the way to grow the sport is to have people who are not interested in become interested just by stumbling across it, but then to like give the people who are into it like content to turn kind of casual fans into rabid fans. And the way you do that is by like putting stories out there, like having regular like content, interviewing players, having like studio programming, like during the week to get them hyped for match days, to like build the narratives around the league. And I think you can get that from independent outlets, but I think I've been disappointed by the lack of that from Apple and from MLS, and it just kind of feels like they're putting out the games and that's it. And so I was hoping when the deal went through that there would just be a lot more around it, and maybe more of kind of a network type production value during the week, and that's just not been there. So I've been a little bit disappointed by that.
Yeah, I think there's so much potential because they do have some great people there, like Danny Higginbotham, right?
Oh
like,
yeah,
him doing an hour, an hour a week, kind of digging into like he was digging into something about how Austin was trying to defend against Son, and like again, like you get some of that when he covers a game, but it would be great for like him, Matt Doyle, Lloyd
Yeah.
Sam's another guy that I really enjoy it whenever he's on a game that I'm watching.
Yeah.
Get a little bit more from them during the week, not just again, you got to cross your fingers like, oh, I hope Danny's doing the Revs game this week, and if he's not, well, okay, that's it. Maybe we'll get him next week.
Yeah, I mean, like Tony Husband is on my men's league team, and just like him and other guys, like they get the league and they know it really in depth. They can just shoot 30 minutes off the top of their heads about any team you want and go like really in depth, and like they understand the narratives, they understand tactics. They're like the people that a lot of the people that Apple has on board already are fantastic, and I just want to see more of them, I guess is the short way of saying it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You get like that whip around show at whatever, like at 7 o'clock before the 7:30 games. I mean, you get like a half hour a week basically. And
do like some kind of like transfer window, like deadline day special, like stuff like that you see. Like NBC does it with the Premier League. I think a lot of it they're like cutting into Sky Sports and using their stuff, but like content like that is kind of just sitting right there, and you have people on staff who are able to do it.
Yeah,
So yeah, that would be my big thing. I'm hoping that we'll see it kind of the extra subscriptions go away in the future. I don't know if that's in the works, but I think with the World Cup coming next summer, if you can kind of remove some of the barriers to entry, hopefully it'll get more people on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what'll be interesting is Apple TV's they've just done a deal with F1.
F1,
and that's it. If you want to watch F1 now, you will be an Apple TV subscriber, and that's it. There's
no additional F1 subscription, which is huge.
Yeah, that's it. So if you want to watch it, you're going to get an Apple TV subscription, and you get all the F1 that you want. And even like there used to be a standalone service called F1 TV. It's all rolled in together into one. So that'll be. I wonder if that's like they'll see how that goes, and then maybe come to MLS and say, hey, this is actually really working out really well for everybody.
I'm hopeful. I mean, like I have no inside info on that, but I feel like I'm hoping that's where things are heading.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. All right, so it's obviously it's playoff time for some of us. Have you, Nashville's obviously gotten themselves in the playoffs. Just quickly, is this the type of season that you expected them to have? Do you think they exceeded expectations? Do you think maybe they kind of sold themselves a little bit short? But how have you felt about Nashville's season so far?
Yeah, I had them finishing in 7th at the start of the year, so not too far off where they finished. I think a couple things. I did not expect the East to be just as top heavy as it's been. Like the top 8 or 9 teams in the Eastern Conference are really, really good teams, and I think would have run rampant in the Western Conference. So I think it's hard to tell how good a lot of the teams in the top 8 are, because in any other year they would have been finishing like 2nd, 3rd, 4th. So it's just been a meat grinder at the top of the Eastern Conference. So I think that made it tricky. I think Nashville are probably better than the 6 where they finished. And I think winning the Open Cup was kind of validation of that. But like their underlying numbers have been like in the top 2 or 3 teams in the East, and I think on the field, they've consistently played like one of the best teams, and just I think it's still not a finished product. They had 14 players leave in the offseason last winter, kind of did a huge rebuild in the winter, and they have another 13 who are out of contract or have options this coming window, and I think it's going to be a similar. Yeah, so I think they're I mean, BJ Callahan, it's his first full year, but I think they're kind of halfway through a 2-year roster rebuild. So I'm expecting a lot more change, and I think this is kind of just the first year in the project, and the fact that they won silverware and made the playoffs and have at times looked like, I mean, they looked like a Supporter Shield contender probably until the last 2 months of the season. So I think the fact that they've looked that good this kind of early into a longer term project, I think bodes really well. I'm expecting them to push up the table next year for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that is quite a contrast to what's been going on up here. To see, first full season with a coach, a lot of turnover, but you're seeing, you're seeing success, almost right away. Lifted a trophy already, sixth place, like you said, in a really strong. I mean, yeah, the Eastern Conference is, once even a team like Columbus is all the way down in seventh. Right now, obviously,
Right.
they've had a tough summer, but still, to see a team with that much quality, with that type of coach, all the way down in seventh is pretty surprising. But the playoffs as a whole, I'm getting used to the 3-game first round format. It's still kind of weird, but again, I think if they just stick with this format, I think we'll all just kind of get used to it and just forget that it was done in a different way. But what do you think about the format itself, but then also kind of the way that they seem to kind of like string along the first round? So it takes, I think it takes almost 2 full weeks. And then you have an international break, and then you come back.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, well, you're actually going to wrap the rest of this up now.
Yeah, I think the Union obviously won their series in 2 games, and I don't think they'll play again until November 22nd or 23rd. So like 3 weeks off, which is just wild.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of a momentum killer, isn't it? Like you get through the first round and you have all these kind of narratives built up. And then it's like, cool, now we'll see you in 2 weeks. So I think the calendar shift, which I'm fully expecting will happen, I think that'll kind of solve a lot of those issues because you're not going to run into that same international break. So I don't think that'll be a long-term issue. The best of 3 series, it definitely wasn't my favorite when it was first announced, and it's still not my favorite. I think it's probably grown on me a little bit. I just think I don't know. I don't think we have to do everything here the way that teams do it in Europe. It just feels a little bit weird, and especially to go from best of 3 to in the first round and then kind of arbitrarily say, okay, now we're just back to single elimination. That it just doesn't feel super consistent. But I've also been kind of pleasantly surprised by just the actual product on the field. Like, I think it is for a league that is still young. I mean, obviously there's history to MLS, but it hasn't been around for hundreds of years. Like, this is a cool and kind of fun way to organically build rivalries. And I think you're seeing that in some of these series. Obviously, you're getting like the Hell is Real derby from Columbus and Cincinnati, which is already a rivalry. But like Nashville and Orlando, not to make everything about Nashville, but like they had, for whatever reason, played each other in like U.S. Open Cup and a lot in MLS. And then last year, they had their not last year, 2023, they had a best of 3 series. And it felt like there was legit bad blood between them. And so now it feels like there's no geographic element to that rivalry, but Nashville and Orlando play each other really tight now and really don't like each other. Same with Miami. Nashville and Miami play each other a lot, and they have this best of 3 series. Even teams like LAFC and Austin, for whatever reason, it feels like they genuinely don't like each other. And playing in a best of 3 series where you're seeing the same team back to back to back, even if there's not any kind of geographic or like pre-existing rivalry, just seeing a team that many times in games that actually count for something, I think that really, really does matter. I think it was last year. Last year when the Galaxy just absolutely dog walked Colorado in the best of 3 series, and obviously went on to win MLS Cup. And then there was some random like April or May meeting between them, and the Rapids won 1-0. And then they were like, their social media admin was like throwing it back to that best of 3 series and trash talking, and it was like a huge thing. And I think that's really cool. Like the league, I mean, we've talked about it already. Like the league needs narratives and needs storylines and needs like heroes and villains for fan bases to kind of latch onto. And so I think even if it's a little weird and quirky, the best of 3 format does kind of build bad blood between teams and kind of build storylines and rivalries for fans next year to kind of latch on to be like, yeah, that was the team that knocked us out in the third game, and so got a red card, and there was like scuffles, and like we really don't like them. And I think the league needs things like that. So from that perspective, I think the best of three format has really worked. If they can figure out the scheduling portion of it, which I think the calendar shift will fix a lot of, if they can figure that out so that momentum doesn't kind of die after the best of three series is over and kind of carries through the conference semifinals and all the way through MLS Cup, I think that would fix a lot of the issues that we're kind of running into with it.
Yeah, because I think some people said, look, they've got to shorten this up, and it's like, yeah, look, that would be great, but I think you're starting off from that's not going to happen, right? Like, I think
the way to shorten it up is to cut Leagues Cup. Like,
right.
If you're worried about fixture congestion, maybe don't make up a full tournament, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And they're not going to, hey, what if they, like what the USL did? USL, the champion, they went from 34 games down to 30 so that they could then fit those extra 4 games in for the Jägermeister Cup. Obviously, MLS is not going to tell all their owners we're taking 2 home games away from you. That would not. That conversation would never even start at this point.
Yeah, I think fixture congestion is a big issue, but I think you can also kind of, if you loosen the roster rules a little bit, like allow for bigger squad sizes, even like more flexibility calling up players from Next Pro. Like right now, you can do 4 games and only 2 action. You can call them up 4 times and only 2 appearances. Like even loosening that a little bit, and yeah, I think you can get creative with the roster rules and not necessarily have to cut games, but I don't think you can keep 30 men like hard roster limits and have all these extra games. Like one of those two is going to have to give, and I think roster is probably the easiest fix.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, especially some of this stuff with the being able to bring players up from from the second team. It's just kind of made up. It's like, well, why? Like when who is going to say no in that situation? The second team player obviously is going to want to take that opportunity at any time that they can. If the team is going through a rough patch or they've got to play midweek or whatever the case may be, like you at least want to get a look at those players at some point anyway to see if there's someone that you want to bring along. Like it seems like kind of an obvious thing that they should do. That why put that limit? Or like you can call them up 4 times and they can only play twice. It's like, well, just maybe give them like a 2-way contract in the NBA. It's like a certain number of days per year, but it's pretty flexible. Like you'll see a guy on a 2-way contract, he'll spend 3 weeks at a time with the team, right, to get
and
through some.
If you're trying to develop players too, like you'd think you'd want that a little bit more. Like, let guys from your development team actually get like real. I mean, they can get real minutes now, but like don't limit that so much. But yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's definitely ways to do that. And like you said, maybe spend a little bit more money, that sort of thing, bring the quality of the roster up and definitely try and, because again, any talk of playing less games is like, look, I mean, I'm all for it. It makes sense, but it's just not going to happen. Right?
Yeah. 34 if anything, it's going to be more games.
Yeah, right. It's not going to go back the other way. Right. For sure. All right. So you brought up the calendar change. One, do you think this is going to happen? And then 2, being up here in New England, to me it seems really challenging how teams in the North are gonna make this work. But do you feel like this is the right way to go, and that it's inevitable that this is what they're going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone. First of all, yes, I think it is going to happen. Like pretty convincingly. As far as if I think it's the right move, I've gone back and forth on that a lot. Obviously, like New England, you guys, long cold winters. Even here in Nashville, it's pretty miserable from like mid-November until February or March. Like when Nashville's played in CONCACAF before and start playing games in early February, it's 40 degrees and you're playing on a Tuesday night and it's just miserable. So there are going to be challenges for it, and I think you're probably going to sacrifice attendance a little bit in some of the colder months. I think I would be shocked if there's not a winter break. And honestly, I'm kind of, this is all like just from speculating with other people. So it's not like reporting any inside info or anything like that. But like I think I'm imagining they're going to make Leagues Cup kind of a more winter tournament. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a winter break, and then in that or around that, you have Leagues Cup kind of in a more neutral location, like in the southern U.S., or even starting to play games in Mexico. So you're not having in-market MLS matches in January or whatever. But and then I wouldn't be surprised if they schedule teams like Minnesota and Kansas City and New England to play like a couple more away games in and around that, and then front and back load home games. So you're not playing outdoors in the winter, but like I think it makes sense to do it just for a couple of reasons. First, transfer windows. I think that does really help MLS as a selling league, which I think is something that they're pushing, and rightfully so. Like, they need to become more of a selling league. And I think it's really hard for MLS teams to sell players in the summer when everybody in Europe is wanting to buy players. And I think that's held them back a few times, just because it's hard to, if you're selling your best player and you still have 5 months left in your season and you can't really replace them. Like Real Salt Lake did that last summer. They sold a couple of their best players, and it just tanked their season. They were one of the best teams in the West, sold 2 players, and never recovered. And so I think aligning the transfer windows fixes that, because you can sell and buy with the rest of the world, and you don't have to choose between selling and developing players and making a profit and being able to reinvest that in the roster, or like competing that year. So I think that's huge. And also, I think there is a lot to be said for switching the playoffs. We already talked about the international window and how it kills momentum sometimes. But I think the idea of not having the MLS playoffs going up against the NFL, even if it's just regular season NFL, like NFL dominates every other sport.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Like NBA, MLB, anything. NFL trumps all of that. And so I think avoiding having any conflict with the NFL, moving away from the World Series, kind of, I know there are other sports going on at the same time, but I do think having a spring, like late May, early June MLS Cup playoffs, I think that only increases viewership, and you're also not having to run into the international windows kind of killing momentum. You're playing MLS Cup in May or June, and it's just better weather, and like you'll have better weather for opening part of the season and closing part of the season, and it might be a little bit rough for a couple months in the middle, but I think overall, I think it's a net positive. And from what I've heard from players, like players even in some of the colder market teams are pretty surprisingly like in favor of it. So I would not be shocked if this happened. It's obviously not going to happen next year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try to make it happen in 2027.
Yeah, I think the weather in the summer is probably it is seemingly only going to continue to go in one direction. The summers are just going to get hotter and hotter and hotter in more parts of the country, and it's tough to play in those conditions. It's tough to play in those conditions, especially if you have to play, if you have to play midweek. For a soccer player, I'm sure it's much better to play when it's 50, 55 degrees outside.
That's what I've heard from players, or they would even rather play in 40 degrees a couple times a year than play in 100 degrees like for half of your season.
Yeah. Yep. No, absolutely. I mean, look, as a spectator, as someone that has coached plenty of games when it's 40 degrees out, it's pretty miserable. But the players, once they go through the warm-up, once they've been out there for 5-10 minutes, 40 degrees, 45 degrees, no problem. We're warmed up. We're good to go. Everybody else might be suffering. Coaches, parents are all looking to get out of there. But again, I think ultimately you might have healthier players that are not being asked to play in these these extreme temperatures.
And I think the product on the field is better too. There are so many games kind of during the long stretch of like June to August where it's 95 degrees. And there's like no tempo to them, and the players look gassed after 45, 50 minutes. And so, like, there are going to be challenges that come up with it. But like, the league is facing challenges with the schedule now, anyway. So there's not going to be any like one perfect solution to it. But I do think you'll probably get like just higher intensity, higher tempo games when you cut out a lot of the hottest parts of the year. At least that's my hope.
No, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, everything. Look, I spent a lot of time trying to educate myself on this stuff back when I did coach. But like, there's really nothing you can do about heat. Like training in heat doesn't prepare you better to play in heat. Like it's not a
Yep.
thing. It actually just increases the odds of getting injured. Like there's nothing you can do. If
Yeah.
it's hot, your body falls apart quicker, and that's just how the world works. Yeah. So I think the challenge will be the initial when they do this, again, going back to the casual fan and trying to get them to wrap their heads around, the season is going to start in the fall. It might kind of stop for a little bit there in the middle, and then it's going to start back up again. And like trying to get people to wrap their heads around, because it's not like that exists. Again, if you're
Yeah.
going back to, well, they do it in Germany. Yes, they do it in Germany, but they've been doing it in Germany, for 150 years or however long it's been. So
Yeah, it's just part of the culture.
yeah, so to a German, it's like, oh yeah, well, we take the winter break for 6 weeks, and then okay, no problem.
That's just how it works.
Here, it's not a thing. So I think that'll be the challenging aspect of it is the casual fan making that adjustment. And like you said, I mean, I think ultimately, if the team that you're supporting is good, people are going to come out when it's cold. I mean, we were at a playoff game in Gillette in November of 2021. It was not warm. It was a cold, late fall night. But there was 40,000 people there because it was, a Shield winning team in the playoffs, and people came out for it.
Yeah.
But if it's February and the team has missed the playoffs 3 years out of the last four, it's 35 degrees out, like then yeah, you know what? I think you're going to get a lot more people to say, actually, you know what? I think I'll just stay at home.
Right. I mean, I think it all comes down to giving people a reason to show up, which is kind of what MLS needs to do, regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last thing here. The spending. We talked about spending a little bit as well, and that does seem the salary cap makes a lot of sense. First of all, that is kind of an American sports thing, but it's been kind of there as like a safeguard, particularly early on in the league's history, to make sure that teams didn't put themselves in situations that you can't get yourself out of, and you disappear. How closely? Because I know you posted something about this on Blue Sky this week. How closely is, because you can still spend a lot more than the other teams in the league if you're so inclined, which Miami obviously is doing to an extreme. But how closely is roster spend tied to success on the field? Like for the Revs, right? The Revs are 12th. They missed the playoffs. That to me straight away is okay. 18 teams got in. You were 12th in spending. You were way out of the playoffs. So something obviously has gone wrong here. But is that something that happens, on a regular basis, or is it more if you spend a lot, you're more likely to end up in a higher place?
I think overall, there's probably some correlation between spending and making the playoffs. I just pulled up the graphic. Let me do the math. 5 of the 6 top spending teams made the playoffs. Atlanta were the only one who weren't in the playoffs. I think a lot of the spending on TAM level players kind of correlates to having a good team. It's so DP heavy though, and I think that makes it really hard to really compare and contrast teams because it's all thrown out of whack by 2 or 3 players. Miami spend more on their 3 DPs than I think. I don't have. I think 17 teams spend on their entire roster. So if you take 3 players off of Miami's roster, they're towards the bottom of the table. Nashville are in 6th. They spent 53% of their total budget on Sam Sirachani, Mukhtar, and Walker Zimmerman. Walker Zimmerman is probably not going to be back next year as a designated player. He's out of contract. So they could sign him to a max TAM deal and have him come back. Theoretically, they could have the exact same roster and be towards the bottom end of the table. So I think it's just the whole DP piece of the puzzle just makes it really convoluted. So I don't think spending dollar for dollar necessarily makes teams good or bad. I think it's hitting on their DPs first and foremost. Typically, the teams who are at the top of the spending charts and are good like Inter Miami nailed their 3 DPs. LAFC only 2 DPs, but they nailed them. Cincinnati, like Evander is best 11 type caliber. Even Chicago are 5th. Their DPs have been fantastic. Like Hugo Kuipers has been awesome. Jonathan Bamba has been really, really good. Nashville have Sam Surge and Hani Mukhtar. Portland Timbers, they're up there. Their DPs have been really, like, so if you're going to spend money on big name players, which that's what the whole DP rule is, they have to produce. And so I think it's less of a question of like spending and more of a question of if the players that you've already spent on show up. And I mean, that's why Atlanta are 3rd and missed the playoffs, because they spent big on guys who on paper should produce and they didn't.
Yeah, I think Toronto is probably the best recent example. I mean, they had Insigne almost single-handedly put them. I think they were top before Messi came in.
I think they were 2nd after Miami once he showed up.
Yeah, and that that was a unmitigated. That was a total disaster, right? And then you throw Bernardeschi, his 6 or 7 million in there as well. You're spending 20 some odd $1 million on 2 players and you can't make the playoffs. For it's like 3 years in a row now. I think that is the interesting thing is it puts so much pressure on the DPs, because that is the one area where if you want to spend big, you can spend big. But I think it'd be interesting to see, like you said, if they could expand the regular salary cap or the TAM GAM stuff. I'd rather they just give them more money, right? Here. Just take this much money and.
If I was commissioner for a day, I would keep 2 DP spots or something like that to give an option to sign Messi, because I think that. I mean, I know fans are kind of other teams that I've talked to are kind of annoyed because they feel like Miami and Messi are just kind of shoved down their throats. But like, it's a good thing for MLS.
Yeah,
overall,
he's a pretty good player.
he's a good player, and he's bringing people are watching MLS. Like hundreds and thousands of people are watching MLS because of him, who would not otherwise care, and so that's good. And you need to have the ability to do that. But like, so keep 2 DPs, and then just throw everything out. Like, have a floor that teams have to spend at, and then have a maximum that they can't go over, and then just let teams figure out how they want to do it in between. If you want to spend if you want to do spend all your money on homegrown players like Philadelphia do and nothing else, fine. If you want to try to figure out a way to sign 14 TAM players, do that. I just think give teams a maximum they can spend, and then just kind of take the training wheels off and let CSOs figure out individually how they want to run their teams. And I think it would first of all, it would be interesting and give fans more to talk about, because there would just be a ton of variety in how rosters are constructed. But I think also it would, you would see better teams, because right now you can invest heavily in 1 through 7 on your roster, and then the really good teams are the ones who somehow find production out of 8 through 14. But now if you can invest in really heavily in spots 1 through 14, and then try to get production out of the back end of the roster instead, I think it just pushes everything forward and makes teams better, and I think raises the quality. So yeah, I get why the salary cap is there, and I like having a salary cap, because I think parity is good and makes things interesting and fun. But I think you can have a lot of the same kind of parity and just kind of raise the level of spending everywhere and kind of take the training wheels off in a sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I definitely think the league is at that point where, again, maybe, you be careful, you give them a floor, you've got to spend at least this much. You can't spend more than this. Other than that, like you said, you build your team how you want to build your team and see how it goes. That for sure would be.
They're already spending a lot. Like Miami are at 50 million without transfer fees. LAFC are 30. But just let teams spend 50 million, but let them spread it out or be more creative with how they do it instead of making it so top heavy. And I think that would just improve things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, Ben, we know you got to go. Really, really appreciate the time. Real quick, 2 things. Who are the 2 teams that we're going to see in the MLS Cup final, and where can people follow your work?
I think Man, I was not prepared. I can't give you two. I can give you four. I can give you four teams who I think it's gonna.
We'll take 4. All right.
Very boring, but I think Philadelphia against Miami in the Eastern Conference semifinal. And I guess Miami going through. And then I cannot pick in the West between Vancouver and LAFC. I think those two are going to be in the Western Conference final, and I think that's going to maybe be the game of the season. Those two are awesome. They're so much fun to watch. Yeah, you can find me. All my Nashville SC coverage is 615soccer.com. You have to spell that all out. No numbers. 615 spelled out. And then I do coverage of just MLS as a whole at Backfield, MLS Soccer America. If you find me on Twitter or Blue Sky at Ben Wright, and I'll post it all there.
All right, awesome. We'll put that all down in the show notes. If you haven't taken the survey yet,
yes.
Ben, how long do people have till they can take that survey?
Yeah, we're going to have the survey open through November 17th, which is kind of the end of the international window. And then we'll have a week or two to kind of collect everything and figure out how to present it. And then the goal is to push out the results in the week leading up to MLS Cup. So yeah, definitely take that. It's I mean, a lot of the independent sites like you guys have it up. You can find it at 615 Soccer. It's up at Backfield. So definitely find that and take that. But also check back. And I think the results are going to be pretty cool.
Awesome. All right, Ben. Thanks again. We'll have to have you back on again later. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime. This was a ton of fun. Thanks for having me.